So they announced the event on the night before. Big secret event. And originally it was a 10-second penalty. Oh no, it was so it goes you shoot 10, or you do a thing, you shoot 10, you do a thing, you shoot 10 on a smaller target, you do a thing, then you shoot 3 magazines with 3 in it. I don't know if it's called a magazine or anyways, the little bullet holder things.
I don't know anything about guns either.
Yeah. So you have to reload on that one. So 9 shots. So a total of 29 shots. So originally it was you have to make 5 of the 10. You have to shoot until you hit 5 of your 10 shots.
Bink, bink.
Yeah. And then once you hit your 5, you can go. But if you didn't hit 5 of 10, then you would receive a 30-second penalty, I think.
Okay.
So that was the original structure. So then they changed it to you have to every shot, and for every miss, you'll get a 10-second penalty. Because basically they like announced the event, and then all the endurance athletes kind of went like, dude, we've been like running and doing endurance things all week. Like we need to throw these like guys a freaking bone here because, you know, this is their jam, shooting, blah, blah. We need to make the penalties harder. So there's like more of a equitable playing field. So they did, which was great to hear. And ultimately it was like too little too late. It was like maybe it should have been 30 seconds per miss, or maybe it should have been a minute per miss or something. Or maybe they should have made us shoot harder guns, because the guns were like, I think, pretty easy to shoot and be accurate. But it was super fun regardless.
Did you have lasers? Like, did you like for the scope? Was it a laser scope?
So there was like a little red dot in the scope. So it wasn't like a laser on the target, like no one else would see it, just you would see it. It was like, that helps.
Yeah, the other point disappointment that I've heard so far was the so many initials, not the pacer, what's the other one?
Past.
And that a 0 in one category meant a 0 for the entire event, which to me seems really not fair or smart.
Well, so the whole point of the past test is that you're supposed to be able to pass it in order to enter the military.
Right.
So I think they were trying to stay true to the standards of like the test and how the test is like defined and stuff. So I don't know, fair or not, that's how it was. But yeah, talk about punishment not fitting the crime. Like, so you got a point, like they did this weird point setup to see who would win, right? But you got 1 point per pull-up, 1 point per sit-up, and 1 point per push-up. As we all know, pull-ups are generally a lot harder than sit-ups and push-ups. So it was like not like it wasn't really smart to kill yourself on the pull-ups and then not be able to do as many push-ups or sit-ups. Whatever. It was the same for everybody. So
no, I understand, and I do understand you're bringing these military aspects, and again, we understand it's a sponsor, it's a recruiting event. Entrance into the military to be ready for battle is different than, well, we've actually like sort of curved this because it's an actual competition. So we're going to give them this flavor, but let's not fucking DQ them because that just to me, it seemed a bit much to me, my personal opinion.
So I literally said, so like for the run, for instance, it was a 10-minute and 20-second time cap. So like to get into the military, you have to run your 1.5 miles in 10 minutes and 20 seconds. And then for every 2 seconds below that, you earned a point. So if you ran your thing in 10 minutes and 20 seconds, you'd get 5 points. Anyways, so
what was that? What were you just doing to the camera? That was weird.
I was trying to do 5, but the camera's too close. So my suggestion was that if you went over the time period, if you ran 10 minutes and 30 seconds, you'd have points taken away. Like you'd get like a negative point thing, which would still like, you know, they would upset your point system and your scoring, but you wouldn't like have these athletes getting DQ'd. So I said that to them and they're like, oh, great idea. We should just DQ them if you don't do the standard. And I was like, no, that's not what I said. And they're like, yeah, that's what we'll do.
They announced that there's going to be a tactical workout. It was not even getting into the shots of it and stuff like that. But what they wanted initially was there was a 10-shot magazine that you had to fire at a target, which was 30 yards away with a rifle, by the way, and a scope. So like practically could have held it at your hip, but that's besides the point. Like,
Are you saying it's too easy to do it that way?
it was incredible. It would be the way that they entered the skill portion of that would be like saying, like, imagine you and I were getting into a competition and we had to play the piano before we went off and ran. And you're like, awesome, I'm going to do great at this because I played the piano for a long time. And then you got up there and they're like, hey, press keys like 1, 7, 9, 5, and 4. I don't know what keys are, but you get the point, right? Like, you're like, this isn't playing the piano. Like, it's not like the skill portion is not representative to what you're doing. But again, I can live with that because most of these people have never fired a firearm, which actually proves the point of how easy it was. When people that have never touched the firearm in their life miss one shot, like, you're like, like, maybe I made that a little bit less of a skill orientation. And the argument to that was like, oh, well, this is a fitness competition. I said, yeah, but like there are more things that go into fitness than just aerobic capacity, right? And he's like, well, this is Spartan. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't think you thought it through very well. So here was the initial rules. The initial rules were...
Are you saying that who's held a gun maybe once, I'm not a big gun guy, I've been to the range like once, we shot some beer, or outside we shot some cans, whatever. Are you saying that I would be able to hit like 6 out of 7?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
That's easy then.
I mean, it was...
Because when you have a scope, it's just explain it to me. Like a scope is easier than you shoot it from your hip, whatever.
Well, first of all, a rifle is really long, right? So you can move your hand around a bunch, and it doesn't really move the firearm that much because the 2 points are so far apart, right? Like say like your rear sight and your front sight. Well, the length of the barrel, right? It's like holding a stick versus like a really short stick, or like a pool stick versus like a chopstick. One is like a lot easier to control than the other. Does that make any sense, or am I not making any sense at all?
No, it does make sense. But again, like I wouldn't know that until you just explained it. In my mind, a rifle is just as hard or easy to use as a Glock. But now that you say that, I get it. Which is why people don't go hunting with a Glock. It's why they go hunting with a big rifle.
Exactly, right? They're making it easy on themselves. They're not making it. If you want to go hunting and make something hard, take a slingshot or a bow and arrow, right? Like
that's what I do, man. I fucking eat with a kill, motherfucker.
Exactly, right? But I mean, again, I don't actually really have a problem with how easy that was because of it. I could say that it didn't change the workouts, right? So what I had a problem with was they imposed a penalty, again, that took less time than it would take to actually do the event, right? So what they said is like, hey, you have 10 shots and you have to hit 5 out of 10 of those shots. And if not, you got a 30-second penalty. I raised my hand and I was like, who's vetted this? They're like, oh, it's been vetted. I was like, I don't think it has. And they're like, well, why do you say that? I'm like, because a proficient marksman, right, to pick a gun off a table, to load that firearm, to shoulder that firearm, to fire 10 shots, to unload the firearm, to put the bolt home, close the weapon, right? Put the gun back on the table and place it on safe is going to take a minimum of 30 seconds. Now, there's competition shooters that can shoot faster than that, but I'm talking about the everyday, comfortable with the firearm type person, right? Probably, I ran par times on people doing it just for shits and giggles, and everybody was 40 seconds or above. Right. So I was like, there's no way that you guys did that. Right. So I thought it was hilarious because by this time
Well, let me ask you. We know that a lot of this was Air Force based because they were the sponsor. Right. Mm-hmm. So did they not even run it by those guys? Like those guys, the ones that they gave you the equipment and the dummies or the real people? Like, did they not, the Air Force guys go, this isn't going to fly?
I'm sure that the Air Force guys wouldn't say that. But the internal talk was a lot different than the external talk, right? Is the easiest way I can say that. And I don't want to put anybody in a position like, I don't care if Spartan hates me, but like,
we'll clear because again, I don't have an issue with listen, they're not marksmen. We're giving them a taste. We're going to show them. I'm okay with that part, but so you make the gun easier, you make the goal easier of the 5 out, like whatever that is. But again, then you cross the line. When, by the way, if you don't do it, it kind of means nothing. And I know what you're going to say next is there's a running thing where everything matters, and they didn't do that part I heard about.
Yeah. So it's like, So basically, if you look at the design of those workouts, so they ended up changing it, and they changed it to the tactical game standards. And I'm pretty sure that's where they got them from. They made every shot worth 10 seconds, right? Which was a lot better than their original decision, and it was changed before the event started. So awesome, right? That's still poor performance from management on the front end of that, right? And something that would need to be cleaned up. But ultimately, if you were to watch that shakeout, you're going to see very similar results to all the other results you saw, because the amount of time that was given to the skill was separated by the worst to the best 20 seconds, right? So you go back to that and you're saying like, okay, so it's really just a ruck, right? So you're rucking against some of the most fit people in the world, and that's how it's gonna settle out.
Here's Atkins, here's Hunter. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much right. Both of them training in mountains and stuff like that, and it's like that is what it is, right?
Right.
So it's great. I didn't miss any shots, and like everyone's like, "Oh, that's awesome," but like I thought it was funny because when I brought that initial point up, the very people that they said that they were not like kind of favoring, like raised their hands and were like, "Hey, we're not even gonna shoot this. Like we're just gonna like touch the gun, go grab our ruck, and we're just gonna go ruck because it doesn't make any sense." And that the very people that I was talking about when I was like, why are you doing this? Like, you know what I mean? Like none of that works. And they were like, no, it's fine. And then like a couple of those hands start coming up and they were like, I'm not gonna do it. And then they kind of blew me off. And then when those other athletes were like, well, I'm not gonna do it, I'm just gonna run. That's when they were like, oh yeah, maybe we'll change this. Let's go have a powwow. Let's go talk about this. And I'm just like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I thought, and I thought that was really cool. I think there were a handful of people who were well versed in shooting. But it was cool because, I'm kind of fall in the middle. Like I've been to the shooting range several times with my brothers and my husband, but like, that's not something I don't have a ton of practice with it. And so like learning, we had a very specific, like we had a gun demo. The guys from the range came the night before, got it, we could practice a little bit with just dry fire stuff and the loading protocol and everything. But it was cool to see, it was for every miss we ended up shooting 29 shots over the course of like that were mandatory over the course of the event yesterday. And there's a 10-second penalty for every miss. So like it definitely and they wanted to weigh that component heavier, and make it really like, hey, you have to, getting your heart rate down low enough to shoot was hard. And but it was really cool to see some of the people who've never really shot before actually do pretty well. So, and I think we all loved that event. Like it took a long ass time because we left at like 6:15 down the mountain. It was an hour and a half away. We had to go back up the mountain afterwards. And the whole production there like took a long time. We didn't get back till like 3 o'clock, almost 4 o'clock. But I think that was a highlight for pretty much everyone. Like everyone walked away like being like, wow, that was so cool. So I loved that they added like that element in there, and added some high skill under, with high heart rate, and then the ruck at the end too. Like it was a steep ruck. That was a 1 mile, half mile up with, the girls are pretty much wearing 50 pounds and the guys are wearing 70. So I really liked that event. And I think that was well received despite the initial like fear of guns or like shyness toward them with shooting and whatnot. It was very safe and well demonstrated.
No, I'm sure those guys definitely made sure of all that. I think I would, even though it's a very different, quote unquote, more dangerous thing, I kind of liken it to the wrestling. You guys at first were like, holy shit. And then afterwards, everyone was like, oh my God, that was amazing. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Exactly. That's how it was received. And the wrestling this year too, for some of those newer folks that were like, wow, that was actually so much fun. Or like, I can't wait to see how that turns out. Like those were some fun matchups.
Did it feel overall, because it was the second one, did it feel kind of more organized, more just like better, I guess, than season one?
And of course, like it's still so new. So there's plenty of things that could have, it's like, wow, that could have been thought out a bit better. This could have, been streamlined a bit better organized, or maybe did they really think of this? Like for the wrestling, personally, I thought the single elimination kind of sucked because, oh, so, you know, you get 8 girls and then 4 of them are out on the first round and you're gonna, and then that's that. Like the way they drew, like we just had random drawings. So like, you know, if let's just say, for example, Meg and I were the best 2. Well, we drew against each other and one of us is going to be out in the first round, you know? And
yeah,
like,
that definitely seems like a double elimination makes more sense.
Totally. So I was really, I was kind of upset about that. I was like, well, why would
that happened to Atkins last year.
Well, last year we had a loser's bracket.
Right, but I think Atkins drew, you know, Kurt the first round, by the way.
It was cool that we got to do the drawing. So it was like, hey, this isn't biased. And it's funny for the girls, like the drawings were kind of perfect. It was like, wow, that would be a really good matchup. Like everyone kind of had like the perfect matchup. Right. But like I said, it was sucky that like some of those matchups could have been the championship one. And so there's a lot. And you know, like to get a 0 in that event when really like you could have been a second place person, you know, it's like,
it's a big deal.
Yeah. Like that. I mean, I was so nervous for the wrestling. I woke up early and my heart was just beat. I was just thinking about it and trying to figure out like, what's my game plan? What's my strategy? Do I remember anything my brother and my husband taught me? Like, and there was a lot on the line for sure.
Does she outweigh you by a lot or no?
We talked about that. She's like 20 pounds heavier than me. So yeah.
That's a difference.
Yeah, it's a difference. She's a boss. She's a boss lady. Super awesome though. Like we definitely got down in the wrestling pit, but it was fun. We had laughs. We, you know, everyone was good sports.
What did you do to prepare for this event? I know they didn't tell you guys too much in advance. Like when did you know for sure it was happening?
I was invited a month out. I didn't do anything to prepare for it. I didn't do anything different. I just kept doing what I was doing. I was like a little bit smarter with my running training before, and I guess I probably upped my running a little bit, my like slow, long distance running, and just made sure my legs were fresh beforehand. But it's just not enough time I was already swimming once a week. I was doing obstacle courses on the weekends on the military base. I was doing a lot of beach running. I'm doing a lot of weighted vest runs. I was doing strength training. So mountain biking. So, oh man, the mountain biking. we had so much fun, but I had a very eventful mountain bike. Let's just say that. I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to, like, basically, if you can, this is my mountain bike. This is the state of my mountain bike. As you can see,
there's no seat.
So that was a very exciting mountain biking race for me.
When did it fall off?
We had 3 laps and then the downhill, 3-mile laps. And in the second lap, it was coming loose. And at the end of the first lap, it was coming loose. And then it came off in the very beginning, toward the beginning of the second lap. So I rode standing up, clipped in. Thankfully I had clips, but I did 3/4 of a lap, 2/3 of a lap with my bike seats shoved in my pants and standing up the entire time.
That does not sound fun.
Oh man, it was bad. I'm an idiot. I didn't tighten my seat screws after adjusting it at the base, and then I left my tool down at the base, and so it was a rookie move.
Well, it sounds like you've got a little thing in your throat that often athletes get after something as intense as the CrossFit Games or this, where you've just put everything out there. Are you worried? Are you gonna take some lozenges? What are you gonna do to take care of yourself?
Everyone's coughing. Like I have the least amount of cough, I feel like, of everyone here. So like if you could probably pick it up on the audio over the course of the week, but like since that day one too, it's just like a lot of all out efforts. Like yesterday, the shooting was at ground, at like sea level. We drove a long ways down the mountain. And then for the 1-minute D-balls, we drove all the way back up, obviously back to our base camp. But then we drove, we summited to the top of the mountain, to do the D-balls because it looked cool. And so we went from like sea level to I don't know, 8,000 feet, maybe 9,000. No, it was probably eight, somewhere in the eights. But to do these 1 minute all out efforts, so that definitely got my lungs. But the whole, I wasn't acclimated. I wasn't most of the athletes were coming straight from sea level, so there was that element that definitely contributed.